They say death comes like a thief in the night. Swift, unforgiving, unannounced. I never thought much about it until it happened to me. My name is Nathaniel Carter, and I live in Louisville, Kentucky. It was December 14th, 2021, a cold, ordinary Tuesday. The kind of day you don't expect to be your last. I had woken up with a dull ache in my leg, but I ignored it. I had too much to do, and pain wasn't something I had the luxury of entertaining. Little did I know, venom was already working its way through my bloodstream, and my life was about to take a turn I could never have predicted. The holiday season had painted the city in festive lights and warm nostalgia. My wife, Emily, had reminded me the night before about the Christmas gifts we still needed. So I made a quick stop at a local antique bookstore, a quiet, hidden gem downtown, to find something special for my father. He had always loved old literature, and I wanted to surprise him with a rare edition of his favorite novel. As I stepped inside, a rush of warm air and the scent of aged paper welcomed me. I browsed the aisles slowly, feeling the weight of history in every book I touched. Eventually, I found it, a leather-bound copy of Moby Dick, first edition. My heart swelled with satisfaction. I paid the elderly shopkeeper, wrapped my scarf tightly around my neck, and stepped outside into the crisp December air. The moment I crossed the street toward my car, my vision blurred. A wave of dizziness hit me so hard I had to grip a nearby lamppost to steady myself. My breath came in shallow, rapid bursts, and an unbearable heat crept up my spine. My heart pounded against my ribs like a desperate prisoner trying to break free. I shook my head, trying to clear my thoughts. Maybe I was dehydrated. Maybe I had stood up too fast. But a sharp, searing pain shot up my leg, forcing me to stumble forward. I barely noticed the horrified expression of a woman passing by as I clutched my chest. The world around me tilted. My knees buckled. I crashed onto the pavement. The city sounds faded into a distant hum. Voices swirled around me, urgent but muffled. A man knelt beside me, shouting something, but I couldn't focus on his words. My own heartbeat was deafening, an erratic drumbeat in my ears. My limbs felt foreign, disconnected. I tried to move, to speak, but my body no longer obeyed me. Darkness swallowed me whole, yet it wasn't the absence of light. It was something deeper, vaster, like slipping between the folds of existence itself. I expected nothingness, but instead I felt movement. A weightless drift, as if I was being pulled through unseen currents, guided by an invisible force. Then a shift. A pressure lifted, and I became aware of something new, a vast, luminous space stretching endlessly in all directions. It wasn't sky or land, but something in between, like a horizon made of shimmering threads of light. These threads weaved and pulsed, forming patterns I instinctively understood but couldn't explain. They weren't just light, they were memories, lives, the very essence of existence. I turned, or rather, I thought of turning, and it simply happened. Ahead of me, a river of golden energy flowed, yet it wasn't water. It was made of people, or souls. They moved with purpose, gliding in and out of the stream, some drawn toward a radiant glow in the distance, others lingering, as if waiting for something or someone. I wasn't afraid. I should have been, but instead, a deep knowing settled within me. This was real, more real than the life I had left behind. Here, time was different. It didn't pass, it simply was. Then a presence emerged, though I saw no figure. It was vast yet intimate, its voice neither male nor female, but resonant with an authority that spoke directly into my being. You are not alone. The air shimmered as if woven with strands of light. I floated weightlessly, suspended between knowing and unknowing, until my feet gently touched solid ground. A fragrance unlike anything I had ever smelled before wrapped around me, a scent of life itself, rich, pure, untouched by decay. I stood at the threshold of a vast landscape, an endless expanse of lush greenery stretching into eternity. Towering trees, their trunks adorned with glowing veins of gold, swayed as if alive. Their emerald leaves reflected the radiance of an unseen sun, yet there was no single light source. Everything glowed from within, as if infused with divine presence. A river flowed nearby, but it was unlike any water I had ever seen. It moved with a deliberate grace, its surface reflecting not just the sky but something deeper, shifting glimpses of memories, moments, entire lifetimes. The water hummed, a melody that resonated with my very soul, as though the river itself was singing creation's song. Then I saw them. Figures, radiant and whole, moved about the land with purpose. They weren't merely walking, they were crafting, shaping, building. Homes, no mansions, rose before my eyes, formed by nothing but will and light. Walls shimmered like polished pearl. Structures of impossible beauty emerged with a mere touch, as if responding to the thoughts of their creators. One soul, a woman dressed in garments woven from light, knelt beside a foundation she was shaping. She turned to me, her eyes filled with recognition, though I did not know her. "Here we do not toil as on earth," she said, her voice like a melody. "We create with joy, for our hands are guided by him." I gazed at the celestial city beyond, a kingdom of unparalleled majesty. Pillars of sapphire and amethyst-lined streets paved with a golden light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Though each soul had their own dwelling, there was a grand home, one that existed beyond individual claim, a place prepared by the Creator himself. Realization crashed over me. Earthly wealth meant nothing. Power, ambition, material possessions, these were shadows, illusions. Here, the true riches were built with love, with faith, with the essence of one's soul. Each creation was an extension of its builder, a reflection of their faithfulness on earth. Some mansions stood towering, magnificent. Others remained small, incomplete. A thought whispered in my mind, though I did not know if it was my own. "What have you built that will last beyond the world you left behind?" I turned, searching for an answer, but before I could speak, the air thickened with expectation. From the horizon, a procession of figures emerged, their movements effortless, as though they glided rather than walked. My breath hitched as I recognized their faces, though I had no memory of meeting them before. Yet I knew them. I knew them as intimately as I knew my own soul. At the front stood a man in his early 60s, his silver-streaked hair falling just past his ears. His eyes, deep and wise, shimmered with an emotion that words could never contain. Beside him, a woman in her late 50s, her wavy blondish hair cascading over her shoulders, watched me with a warmth that melted every ounce of tension from my being. Between them stood a boy, no older than 7, his dark curls bouncing as he tilted his head with curiosity. His eyes, bright as morning stars, studied me with an innocence untainted by time. They all smiled. Not the kind of smile exchanged between strangers, but something far more profound. It was a recognition, a reunion that transcended the limits of my understanding. I took a hesitant step forward, expecting to feel the weight of my body. But there was none. Here, movement was effortless, unrestricted by gravity or fatigue. As I approached, they neither spoke nor gestured, yet understanding passed between us like an unspoken language. My heart swelled with a love so deep, so unbreakable, that it filled the spaces between us like a golden thread weaving through time itself. Tears blurred my vision, but they were not from sorrow. They were from revelation. For in that moment, I understood something beyond all earthly reasoning. The suffering, pain, and losses of the world I left behind were temporary. Every tear shed, every moment of despair, was but a single thread in a grander tapestry, one that could only be seen in its entirety from this side of existence. I felt the weight of my past losses dissolve into something greater, something whole. I had never truly lost anyone. Not really. They had only stepped ahead, waiting for the appointed time when we would stand together again, just as we were now. Beyond them, I glimpsed realms beyond comprehension, layers of existence unfolding like pages of an eternal book. Some places shimmered with a brilliance beyond words, while others exuded an air of divine purpose. I could not yet grasp their meaning, but a peace so profound settled over me that I no longer needed to. Everything was as it should be, and in the end, all will be okay. Just as the realization settled in my soul, an unshakable understanding that everything was as it should be, I felt a shift. It was as though the very fabric of the heavenly realm thinned, and I was being pulled through unseen currents, weightless yet propelled with purpose. A force, neither violent nor gentle, carried me through what felt like layers of existence, and before I could comprehend what was happening, I found myself somewhere eerily familiar. I was back on Earth. The hospital. I recognized it instantly. The fluorescent lights hummed softly, their sterile glow illuminating the halls. Doctors moved with urgency. Nurses murmured among themselves, the scent of antiseptic and despair lingering in the air. But something was off. I wasn't in my body. I hovered above it, suspended in an ethereal form, observing from the ceiling like an unseen spectator. There I was lying lifeless on the hospital bed. Machines beeped in rhythmic pulses, monitoring what little vitality remained in my body. Tubes and wires connected me to reality, yet I felt no attachment to the flesh below. I was neither frightened nor desperate, only curious. My thoughts turned immediately to my family. Where were they? Had they given up hope? Without needing direction, I drifted effortlessly through walls and corridors until I reached the waiting room. And there they were. My wife sat rigidly, her hands wringing the hem of her sweater. My younger sister leaned against the wall, her eyes swollen from silent grief. My best friend Mark paced, rubbing the back of his neck, while my mother sat still, lips moving in whispered prayers. The weight of their emotions was palpable. I stepped forward instinctively. "I'm here," I tried to say, but no sound came out. And yet they reacted. My wife suddenly shivered and looked around. My mother paused her prayer, her brows furrowing. My sister blinked as if trying to shake off an unseen presence. They couldn't see me, but something deep inside them felt me. A sudden realization struck me. Even in this state, our spirits know each other. The bond between family isn't merely physical. It transcends time, space, and even death. Then something even stranger happened. I turned my attention to a conversation unfolding between my childhood friend, Daniel, and my cousin Lisa. I had no reason to listen in, but their words gripped me. "She told me that he always had dreams about this," Daniel murmured. "Like near-death experiences." Lisa shook her head. "I don't believe in that stuff. But get this, he told me once that if he ever died, he'd try to give us a sign." I wanted to scream. "I am here. This is the sign." But my presence remained only a whisper in their subconscious. Then I noticed something even more peculiar. My wife and Mark were talking quietly in the corner. As I listened, I realized they were discussing a private conversation that had happened between my sister and my aunt earlier that day, one I couldn't have been physically present for because I had been in surgery at the time. I repeated their words to myself, memorizing them. I didn't know why, but something told me this moment would prove to be important later. Time passed in a blur, yet I had no concept of how long I lingered. When the moment came for my spirit to be drawn back to my body, I felt an unseen force calling me, pulling me toward the hospital bed where my body still lay in stillness. And then, a sudden rush, a gasp. My chest expanded violently as I sucked in air, my body jerking as if it had been shocked back to life. Machines beeped erratically. Nurses scrambled, calling for the doctor. I felt a crushing weight in my chest as my spirit fully re-entered my flesh. I was back, but something was different. Days later, when I finally regained the strength to speak, I recounted the conversations I had overheard in the waiting room, the one between my wife and Mark, and the one between my sister and my aunt. I described the waiting room itself in exact detail, the arrangement of the chairs, the coffee stain on the carpet, the way the overhead light flickered slightly in the corner. My wife paled. "That's impossible," she whispered. "How did you know that?" I told her the truth, that I had seen and heard everything while I was gone. At first, they tried to rationalize it. Maybe someone had told me. Maybe I had overheard it in my semi-conscious state. But then my sister spoke up. "No one ever told you what I talked about with Aunt Carol. That was a private conversation. And you were in surgery when it happened." Silence filled the room. No one could explain it. In that moment, I knew. I had seen a glimpse beyond the veil of this world. And more importantly, I now understood something that had never crossed my mind before. The dead, those who have passed on in Christ, continue to exist. They are not lost in oblivion. They see us. They know us. And sometimes, they can reach us. But not in hauntings. Not in eerie shadows or whispered chills. Rather, in the quiet nudges, the fleeting feelings, the inexplicable moments of connection that defy logic. I had always feared death. But now I knew the truth. Death was not the end. It was merely a doorway. A couple of days before I left the hospital, my eyes still adjusting to the dimly lit hospital room, I saw her, my mother. She was hunched over, clutching my hand, tears streaking down her face. My father stood just beyond her, his expression a mixture of disbelief and silent prayers answered. Then it hit me. The three figures in the light, the ones I had seen in the realm beyond, were not strangers. They were my family, my grandfather, my grandmother, and the boy. A boy I hadn't recognized at first, but now, memories surged through me like a floodgate bursting open. He was the son of my aunt. He had died before I was even born. Yet, I had seen him, spoken to him. I had walked with them in a place beyond this world. My thoughts swirled as I struggled to make sense of it all. Then a new realization struck me, a message. One I had been entrusted with. It was my grandfather. He had spoken to me in the realm beyond. And he had given me something, a secret only my father would understand. As if on cue, my father stepped forward. His eyes searched mine, desperate for answers. I saw Grandpa, I whispered, my voice hoarse. My mother inhaled sharply, and my father stiffened. He told me to tell you something. My father's fingers dug into the bed railing. His eyes glistened as he nodded for me to continue. Underneath the old oak tree, I murmured, my voice almost failing me. In the wooden box. He said it's time. My father's face turned ghostly pale. He staggered back as if struck, his breath catching in his throat. No one knew about that, he whispered, his voice barely audible. He looked at my mother, then back at me. Not even your mother. My heart pounded. The message was real. The experience was real. I had been somewhere beyond, and I had returned with proof. Tears welled in my father's eyes, but he quickly wiped them away. He told you about the box. I nodded slowly. He said you'd know what to do. My father turned away, his hands trembling. He took a deep breath, then walked toward the window, lost in thought. I could feel the emotions radiating from him. Grief, disbelief, and an undeniable sense of awe. I had no idea what was inside that box, but I knew it mattered. It was something my grandfather had left behind, something hidden away for years, waiting for this moment. The proof was undeniable. I had seen my grandfather, my grandmother, and my long-deceased cousin. And I now knew the truth. Family is eternal. We recognize each other beyond this life. We are never truly lost. I closed my eyes, exhausted but at peace. Heaven was real. And so was the love that bound us together. I lay in my hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind reeling from everything I had seen. The experience was more than just a vision. It was a revelation, a truth so profound that it shattered every earthly doubt I had ever held. Heaven was real. Family was eternal. And the love that bound us together transcended even the finality of death. Before this, I had always believed in something beyond this life, but belief and certainty are two different things. Now, there was no doubt. I had stood in the presence of my grandfather, my grandmother, and my young cousin, 3 souls long departed from this world, yet more alive than I had ever seen them. Their embrace had been warm, their words filled with wisdom and love. They had recognized me, and I had recognized them. The bonds of family remained unbroken, unchanged by time or death. And now, back in this frail mortal body, I felt a strange peace settle over me. Life had always felt like a chaotic storm, one trial after another, one heartache following the next. But in that place, I had seen the truth. There was purpose in everything, even in pain. I understood now that we only see a fragment of the story from this side of eternity. What looks like loss is only a temporary separation. What feels like suffering is often preparation for something greater. I knew that many would not understand. How could I put into words the depth of what I had seen? How could I describe a peace so profound that it made even the greatest struggles of life feel small? People live burdened by fears of loss, of failure, of the unknown. But I had glimpsed what lay beyond, and it had changed me. Death was not the end. It was merely a doorway, and those who were in Christ lived on, awaiting a reunion more joyous than anything this world could offer. That knowledge reshaped how I saw everything. Grief still existed, but it no longer had power over me. Yes, there would be moments of sorrow, of longing for those who had gone before. But sorrow was no longer hopeless. I knew with unwavering certainty that my loved ones were not lost to me. They were simply home before me waiting. The pain of their absence was softened by the reality of our future reunion. My heart ached for those who had never found this truth, those who wandered through life clinging to temporary things, money, power, status, never realizing how fleeting it all was. What did any of it matter in the face of eternity? If there is one thing my experience has taught me, it is this: we are not guaranteed tomorrow. Life is short, but eternity is forever. The time to love, to forgive, to mend broken relationships is now. Do not wait for the perfect moment. Do not hold on to grudges that will mean nothing in the grand scheme of eternity. Shift your focus beyond the temporary. Live for things that last. Invest in what truly matters, your relationship with God and your love for others. Choose kindness over resentment. Choose faith over fear. Choose to live every day with eternity in mind. Ask yourself, are you ready for eternity? Are the people you love ready? Because one day, sooner or later, we all must step through that doorway. And when that moment comes, will you be stepping into light or into darkness? If you have lost someone who knew Christ, take heart. The separation is only temporary. They are not gone. They are waiting just beyond the veil. One day, you will see them again, not as shadows of who they once were, but in their true, eternal glory. Jesus has already made the way. He has extended the invitation to all who will believe. But time is running out. If you have not yet chosen him, I urge you, do it now. Surrender your life to the one who holds eternity in his hands. Pray for those who do not yet know him. Share his love with your family and friends before it is too late. Make the choice today. If you are ready to step into his kingdom, declare it now. Type in the comments below, I choose Jesus and his kingdom. And remember this, in heaven there is no sorrow, no pain, no separation. Live today with that hope. Love deeply, forgive freely, and prepare your heart for the day when you, too, will step beyond the veil and into the arms of the one who has always been waiting for you.